Ito. Extension din.
Sige, pwede siguro.
Dito na lang siya sa gitna. Para posible. Hey!
Focus na lang.
Sa screen, sa?
Hindi, sa tao. Kasi may screen eh. Tignan mo. Yun ang kinakapture. Okay, so yeah, these are probably some of them are not so familiar with you. These are the ingredients, key ingredients for one of the key ingredients for implementing CI or continuous integration.
Sometimes they're actually
And
confusion about
that's
and
so. Sometimes there are actually confusion about continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Okay. So continuous delivery is a set of process, tools, techniques, strategies to continuously deliver
one of the scenarios
deployable version. So
continuous integration
in one of the scenarios, like for example, you've been running continuous integration, and at the end of and the product of that is a deployable version. So sometimes you not necessarily deploy every produce of your continuous integration. So it just sit there and waiting for the signal, go signal from your project manager or your stakeholders. Okay, Paul, can you deploy our version as of today? So then they can be able to push that to live.
benefits here is
And well, it reduces cost. I think the most benefits here is the time. Time is so precious, especially for a company that runs continuous integration probably 100 times a day because of feature sets that they are pushing. When I say feature sets, these are bug fixes, patch, or probably some features that they added to the platform. And so it says here, continuous delivery doesn't mean every change is deployed to production. It means every change is proven to be deployable at any time. So that's the main meaning of delivery, continuous delivery. It just sit there waiting for the time that it will be deployed to production. I mean, isn't it that great that when your project manager says that, oh, well, can we push our platform version X or as of 3 o'clock last night, this morning, can we deploy that? So it's easy to, it will be easier for you to say, yes, we can deploy that. In a traditional development company, they will say, let me check, sir. Let me check if may bug pa or it's ready for deployment. But continuous delivery is already done. Kumaga, it's just waiting for the right click to deploy that on production. So here's the common process. So for continuous delivery, first they do some unit testing. So unit testing can be using PHP unit test, where it tests every functionality of your application. Like for example, the login. If I put digits to my email, will it feedback that something is wrong with the input? So you'll have an error in that area. And then platform test is basically testing if your main functionality of your platform is working. Then delivery to staging. So these are automated. Application acceptance test. When we say application acceptance test, this can actually mean behavioral testings, content testing. So we will talk about behavioral testing in a while. And then deploy to production. So sometimes it can be manual because it's, as I said a while ago, it's waiting for your stakeholders or your project manager to say, oh, can you push that on production? So that's why deploy to production is manual for continuous delivery. And then once you deploy that, there will be an automated post-test. So if you check how many tests are in the area, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different tests before you can say that your application is up and running 100% uptime. This is the main reason why they're 100% sure that we can provide you an SLA of 99.95%. Yeah, Microsoft Azure has an SLA of 99.95%. That means that the availability of their platform, it can be their IaaS service, their PaaS, or their SaaS, is 99.95% that it's available for uptime. At Pantheon, we also provide SLA for our big elite customers. So in order to attain that level of confidence, you need to have this setup. But if you're a small company and striving to do your standards, then probably you'll start in the CI alone, and then go through your continuous deployment. So I don't know if OLX is already in this level, continuous deployment, where when somebody posts their, let's say, their bug fixes or their features, it's automatically goes through their production without human intervention. I know a company that does this. It's one of the biggest e-commerce sites.
In the continuous deployment, this cannot just be attained
We'll go back to that. But in the continuous deployment, this cannot just be attained in a year or the company is big enough to provide large infrastructure. This actually
your 100% of your developers
includes the skill sets of your development team. I mean, your 100% of your developers are already have that mindset that when they push their codes, it's already 100% that it will work. So from unit testing, platform test, delivery staging, it's the same with continuous delivery, but continuous deployment engage with their development team skill sets, strategies. So before they, I mean, personally, when they push, that means 100% will work. Before it will go through their unit testing, platform test, it's already working. So it's hard to have those, to have that kind of software development developers. So these are people with years or decades of experience. So, I don't know, probably some of you is still catching up. But the most common strategy for development companies, they basically do development workflow first by forking their repository. So when we say forking, it's just copying a repository going through your account. Say for example, your company X has a GitHub account and there's an application there, and if you want to copy that, you need to fork it. And then the value from there, that's actually the number of users currently deployed in their respective accounts.
You have some bug fixes.
So first, you fork the repo, and then if you want to, let's say you have some bug fixes or you have some added features, then you do a pull request. So these are actually the modern jargons in the development sphere. So when somebody asks you, hey bro, can I contribute in your code? And then somebody will say, sure bro, just send me a PR. So sometimes, if you're not familiar with this jargon, so you'll say, what's PR? Send me PR. Send me pull request. That means you need to fork her or his repository, and then do your coding, or if you want to add something, if you want to change some of the logic there, then you go to the repository and do some pull request. Okay. And Jenkins. So we are now talking about continuous integration. So as you fork and as you submit your pull request, once you initiated the submission of pull request, there will be a process in the background that will run. So some of them could be Jenkins, some of them can be Travis, and some of them can be Circle CI. So Jenkins is actually one of the most famous CI tool. So it has a lot of plugins. It basically triggered build process upon submission of your PR. Because, of course, if I submit a PR, let's say,
so who among here familiar with forking? Forking, yes.
so who among here is familiar with forking? Forking, yes, 2. Okay, 4. They will show that. Connect lang ako sa net. The problem here is that I cannot connect with my laptop to... Yes. Okay, cloning can be via terminal. So you clone using your terminal, but if you're using the dashboard, you can just click fork and it goes to directly to your account.
I think pag clone, same lang yung parang pag nag-remote sa Shopee, so same lang yung path niya. So pag nag-push ka doon, makukuha na agad. Unlike pag nag-fork ka, sarili mo yung repo. So kahit mag-push ka na mag-push, you need to send a pull request so that the owner of that repo can check before merging your changes.
So parang ibang branch, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
So So let's show you one of the examples.
I understand it's 3 years ago, but I've been using GitHub for like 6 years.
Actually, I just fully understand this 3 years ago, but I've been using GitHub for like 6 years already. And here's an application from my colleague. It's actually a Redis analyzer. If you hover the fork here, it says that this repository were actually forked by Fusion X1. So just single person who forked this application, and this is the link to that repository. So as an owner, you have an idea already that who forked your application, because GitHub is a social network for developers. You share applications. So this is like the Facebook of applications. So one of the benefits of forking is that it also allows you to clone or to submit patches, or if you change something in your code and you want to submit that to the owner, you can directly do that by a dashboard. So I actually forked it, and then let's go there.
So commits.
Click that.
So commits, these are actually my changes.
And I added some commits. So commits, these are actually my changes. So I can click this area here, so you can check what are my changes. So I basically added some stuff in there.
Without merging this, I can basically...
So now I merge my application to his repository. Without merging this, I can basically play around with this fork version.
Add some...
So you can do whatever you want. You can modify it. If you want to add some applications, you can free to do that. But the original application, it's still there and it's intact. And if you submit a PR request, you will receive it from here. So
user specific.
this is the PR that I've sent. So I told him that I replaced the user because it's user specific. So I told him that it will not work with other users. So I told him to replace the DICIX, that's actually the username, to replace $who am I. So that means that any user can be able to port that, and they don't need to replace it with their username. Just $who am I, and it will automatically recognize the user. And he approved it. It says here merge. So the color, this one, it says merge pull request. And now it's already in the original, and you will see the contribution. You'll see there, contributors, and I have here a short code. So that is how GitHub repo forking and merging stuff within the dashboard.
There are some changes in GitHub, so you don't need to clone this.
And one of the wonderful things that change, and there are some changes in GitHub, so you don't need to clone this, the repository, to be able to edit it. So by just directly going to your
example, this is the fourth version, so I can go directly to the file and I can actually edit that. And
So like for example, this is the fourth version, so I can go directly to the file and I can actually edit that and edit something there. Because before it will not allow you to do that. You still have to clone it and edit the file in your machine. So now, if your machine has no Git installed, or if your machine is or you're just using mobile phone, it's easy to just go there and edit. And from the edit, I can basically create a branch. So this is a branch where I want to, if you want to send a PR request to the original maker of this application, then you create a patch. So once you create a branch, I can create a pull request, and I can basically there. So since I'm the owner, I can also do the merging from there.
your repository is integrated.
So from this scenario, when I set a pull request, and if your repository is integrated in a Jenkins or in a Circle CI or in Travis, there will be a testing that will run from that moment. And
So we're just
we'll
talking about
discuss that in a
typical
while.
development
Let's
workflow.
go there.
Jenkins, and then
So we're just talking about typical development workflow.
subject for code review in
Jenkins,
manual
and then
process. Well,
as I've said a while ago, when you send a pull request, it will be subject for code review in manual process. Well, of course, you don't need to approve right away, because who knows, maybe some of those codes will break your main application. So you need to review it. Sometimes I do personal review. You check the code, the specific line that he added, line 1, line 2, okay, then that's the time I will confirm and approve the pull request. But imagine if you are managing a large repository with thousands of developers around the world contributing to that repo. Do you think if you're a manager, hindi ka mahirapan? If you're just one? Of course, that's why we need a continuous integration, especially if you're a big company. So you don't need the manual code review. You need to create a testing for that, just like what we showed a while ago in the funnel. And then, so this is the typical merge pull request.
Your request, your Jenkins, if you're using Jenkins,
And
this is what you will see.
once
Preloader,
it sends a PR request, your Jenkins, if you're using Jenkins, this is what you will see. There's a preloader there. That means that it's basically doing something, probably checking if the code is up to the standard of PHP, which we call that PSR 6, that checks the coding standards. So if you're developing for Drupal, we also have that checking. It checks the hooks and spacing. Don't you know that in Drupal, the spacing is actually 2 space? If you're, who wants 2 space part? But if you're a Django developer or a Python developer, I think it's 4 space. And a typical PHP framework is also, it's 4 space. So when you go to development and you are still doing that 4 space, and when you use the standard review for Drupal, you will have an error because it's using 2 space. In Drupal, spacing margins is already a big deal because it will not allow, especially if you're submitting a contributed module, and if you want to submit your module to Drupal.org, it will be subject for technical review and spacing. They're very, very strict with that. So you need to make sure that you adhere with to space and margins. Do you know this one? This guy?
There's
You're
actually
familiar with
TV series called Silicon Valley.
Stable.
Start-
There's actually a TV series called Silicon Valley. So if you're,
Silicon
and
Valley.
if you love startup, if you love
This guy is actually the CEO.
forming your own team, then
The CEO.
Silicon Valley, a TV series, is really good for you. And this guy here is actually the CEO. So as a CEO, he's just asking somebody from the team, oh, is it done now? So, as a developer, you'll say,
And
most likely it will be done.
up to the original version. 7 years ago,
It should be done.
we used to
And
set up
let's go back to the original workflow. 7 years ago,
exam,
we used to set up
upload your
local, when we have a local copy, probably you're
production
using
site,
an exam,
original
and
workflow.
and if you want to
We have this
upload
code,
your
done, it's already done in my laptop.
application to your production site,
Via
then this is the original workflow. Like,
Okay.
so I have this codes, it's already done in my laptop, then I'm ready to transmit that via FTP. Do you think
No, yes.
this one is still good,
Give some.
guys?
Why no, bro?
No.
No.
No, yes.
Still attacks. Unity.
Can you give some? Why no, bro?
Yeah, I think
Man-in-the middle attack, security issues.
major issue
Anyone?
using FTP, but a lot of people, a lot
Yeah,
of
I think
ICs,
I think that's one of the major
developers.
issue if using FTP. But
One of the
a lot of
FTP is
people, I still see developers who are still using FTP. But one of the problem there is FTP is actually unsecured. So when you transmit your files, it can actually be intercepted and it can be read because it's running under port 21.
there.
Port 21, yes. So that's
8 years ago, I still
that's
remember I was
unencrypted.
using
And then from there, you go to code, database, and production. So 8 years ago, I still remember we were using, I think most of our application is Joomla. And during that time, in 2008, I was still a Joomla developer and I was actually one of the founders of Joomla Philippines. And we organized the first ever Joomla Day Philippines. And during that time, Joomla community is actually one of the most active
sometimes
community.
when I transmit
And
actually during that time I'm not using FTP.
from there, I've experienced a lot of FTP, man-in-the-middle attacks. Sometimes when I transmit FTP, actually during that time, I'm not using FTP anymore. I'm using SFTP or WinSCP. So I'm secured, but a lot of our agency clients, they usually use FTP. They're actually using FileZilla. So they're using FTP, they transmit, and then after a day or two, they will complain, why is it our site is hacked?
A lot of malware.
Well, when we check, there's actually a lot of codes within the database itself. I mean, in the database, there are a lot of malwares. And it's really very hard to extract those malwares inside your blobs or inside your tables. So this is a not it's a big no-no setup, especially at this time. Okay, if you know someone using this, please beware and immediately tell them to use SFTP.
You create an issue, especially on GitHub. You can actually
And here's the traditional workflow. So you create an issue, especially on GitHub. You can actually
Project management tool. GitHub is actually already.
if you're a startup company and you're looking for best project management tool, GitHub is actually already a project management tool.
So here's a wiki. You can basically create documentation of that particular project, and then I think
So here's a wiki. You can basically create the documentation of that particular project, and then I think they already.
you have issues. You can create issues or
I think because before you can actually have a issues. You can create issues, or you can create tasks, and from there you can use GitHub to create your tickets or feature sets, or these are feature sets that they enabled it by default. Let's proceed.
Probably some of you will is not familiar with how
Okay.
software is being
Probably some of you will is not familiar with how software is being deployed on a production level. So this is a traditional workflow. So you code, and your code goes to your local machine, okay, your local machine, and then you upload that to your development. Your development, it can be a separate server, so like server 1, server 2, server 3. So your dev is your, this is where you do your heavy development. Okay. And staging can also be your testing test environment, where your QA, your quality assurance users will use this instance to do their Selenium testing, do their unit testing from there, and their behavioral testing. And then once all those tests are accepted, then you go to production. You upload that on production. But there are actually intricacies in this setup. So let's, for example, on production. And on production, that's where you add your contents on a daily basis. So that means that your contents are actually up to date in your production server. But your development process is up to date in your development setup. So how are you going to merge your contents and your development changes? So this is the flow. So the code basically goes in the direction from your local machine, goes to dev, then goes to your test and live. Now your content. So your content, most of them are database driven. So because your content is always updated on live, then you probably do MySQL dump from your production, and then you copy that dump file going to your staging, and then from your staging you restore the database using the latest dump. And the same is true with them, and then you copy it to your local machine so that you get the updated version. So I don't know if you can imagine the intricacies of setting that up. I remember 7 years ago when we have this kind of setup, it's complicated because sometimes it doesn't go with the flow, the way that you have intended that your application will go smoothly. Sometimes your internet sucks, and that dump file is already 10 gig of files, but the only change there is only one MB. So the main point is that the change is only 1 megabyte, but what you do is you MySQL dump a 10 gigabyte of data, you transfer it to your staging, your dev. Can you imagine how big is your how it will impact your network bandwidth? So transferring a gigabyte of data will basically affect your network bandwidth just as much as possible to reduce that. So these are the traditional workflow that a CI, a continuous integration, is trying to fix.
Code, you commit your feature to a branch.
So now it's the same workflow. Create an assign issue. You code, you commit your feature to a branch, you code review before merging to them.
So that we can build product.
So why do we do continuous integration? So that we can build a product, right? We can reduce the risk of release.
If I put my shoes to my stakeholders.
Well, real project progress. Because if I put my shoes to my stakeholders, they're not actually they're not particular with how you work or how hard it is to create the logic. What's in their mind is feature number 1 done? Is feature number 2 done? They're not really particular with those issues unless you really voice out and let them know technically. The problem is most of the stakeholders are non-technical. So they only see those bullet points, whether it's done or not.
Just ask customer one. Try to give that to them. This is very, very familiar.
Steve Jobs says
How we
that
get it?
you can't just ask customer what they want and then try to give that to them. This is very, very familiar with probably some of you guys. By the time you get it built, they want something new. This is very, very true for people who do freelancing. This is because of the communication between customers and freelancers. Probably this will also be tackled later on by Mr. Pagulay, our guest speaker today, in the afternoon. So this is really true. You know, sometimes your client will go to you and, please, can you build this for me? Can you build this feature A for me? And by the time that it's done, you will say, can you maybe revise it and make it like this? My solution to this is to have document in writing. You know, this is feature 1, and this basically, you agreed upon that, and the cost is that. So you sign that, both of you, so that you will not be
reducing the risk by using CI. Okay. Here's the thing.
So basically, reducing the risk by using CI.
And sometimes, me, I also do that.
Okay. Here's the thing.
Sometimes I do a bunch.
So if you're doing development, and sometimes, me, I also do that. I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I do a bunch of changes.
Probably 10
I commit
whole week. And then
one big time. Like for example, I did several changes, probably 10 files in that whole week. And then by the end of the week, I will push all of them at once. and by the time that it goes to your production or even your testing, it will go boom, error. Because this kind of strategy sometimes is risky. Probably some of those changes will affect your current situation or current version of your platform. That's why it's always recommended to do an incremental, little by little, probably every file that you
There's
change,
an issue on
or even every change you do, you commit that.
That's actually
And
time.
there's an issue on